going to say something before about personality types. I mean, interrupt me when it comes to you, or when. But I'm just thinking that in Cleanse of the Alphane Moon, there's like the most direct dealing with personality types, and just the.
Well, you mean the psychiatric clinical entities?
Clinical entities, the defensive. The paranoids, and the obsessive compulsives, manics, and schizophrenics, and polys. Is that meant to be like Pollyanna in a way?
No, polymorphous.
Polymorphous
something.
Yeah.
Polymorphous psychosis. All symptoms or something.
Right.
Kind of a plastic psychosis, plasticity.
Which is kind of fascinating. Well, it was a fascinating concept in that book. But it'd be more interesting to me to kind of look over some of the other books and pick out. I mean, it seems to me almost as though in writing a book, partly you'd be writing it out of a certain mood, but also perhaps you take on the mood of the protagonist in the book. And they come out very different.
Yeah, well, that's true. Characterization, in science fiction is not usually very well developed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not really. With me, it's not so much in this. We're not talking about characterization. We're talking about viewpoint. We're talking about a radical viewpoint.
Right. Which draws the reader into it.
We're seeing from inside out the person, how the world looks. And it's all sort of like, Faulkner's.
That's very good.
Which one it was? Is I Lay a Dying or Sound and Fury? Sound and Fury?
Well,
Benji the Idiot?
Yes, Sound and Fury.
Yeah. The theory that I read once, schizophrenia, the world of a schizophrenic person is so different from ours that he can't empathize with our world and we can't empathize him. There's a double breakdown. Like we do things and he watches us. He can't understand why we do them. He sees what we do, he can't understand why. And we see him do things. We know what he does, but we can't understand why.
The end of Humpty Dumpty was like that.
Oh. Now, this is just a bunch of bullshit. Because it presumes as a concrete entity of schizophrenia versus us.
Oh, you mean like there's normal that exists?
Right.
And there's
the fact of the matter is that it's a continual, gradation amongst people. That we never have sufficient ways of checking on our assumptions about why other people do things, or even really what they're up to and what it signifies to them. To ever know that we're wrong. We watch them and we think we know, and we don't know. We never find out that we don't know. And the schizophrenic is not that much different. I deny it. I really deny it. I mean, except for very bizarre cases where we see bizarre behavior, so bizarre that we cannot imagine. It's the point where we cannot imagine. It's something we would never do. Something like like paint themselves all over with purple paint and run naked through the street. And we say, well, I would never do that. And we ask them why they do it. But until it reaches that point, I think all around us, our friends are doing things, and what they do is similar to what we do. Maybe even identical to what we do. And we make presumptions about why they do it. And there's no reason to assume, that they're doing it for the same reason. In other words, you and I sitting here, neither of us being nuts, neither of us exhibiting bizarre behavior, would assume that if I was in your mind and you were in my mind, we were switching around, we'd see things the same, we'd perceive the world the same way, and so forth. It's not really true. This is not a really a philosophical question. It's a very real question. That two people can do identical things for completely different reasons. And the kind of misunderstandings that arise between a mentally ill person and a non-mentally ill person is just that it's a little more extensive, a misinterpretation of intention, motivation, or purpose of significance. It's just so little exaggerated,
This is why there are multiple viewpoints in your books.
Right, and I just choose mentally ill people because it's greater.
And exaggeration.
Yes, exactly. These are grotesques, in other words, like Dickens characters. And but it always should be borne in mind that I'm really talking about us. too, but it is more striking, perhaps, if I use a more exaggerated discrepancy between people's viewpoints, like in Martian Timeship. But it doesn't just apply to people who are mentally ill. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Certainly, that is a tremendously important point.
I think that people who like your books instinctively understand that, too.
I hope so, because
they don't necessarily feel that they themselves are mentally ill.
Oh, no, but, it worries me to think, that like I'm saying, we're all saying, well, we're normal people, and these are grotesques and bizarre people and freaks and so on.
No.
And the fact of the matter is that these are what Jung called an Archimedean standpoint, to get outside. And from this bizarre standpoint, looking at Confession of a Crap Artist is the best example, that Jack Isidore's bizarre view of their world, the so-called normal world, gives us an insight into him, a bizarre person, a freak. But also it gives us an elliptical view of ourselves, which gives us insight. Either one can be regarded as bizarre in relationship to the other, depending on which one you want to start with.
And if you have characters in which you project various aspects of your personality or my personality as the reader, then we actually get the chance to see this side of me through this person's point of view, and at the same time, you know what I mean, to actually switch back and forth between two people, each of whom we can identify with, and each of whom, when we're identifying with the other one, the first one seems nutty.
Yeah.
Seems strange.
Yeah, that would be the ideal thing, that, if one could eventually write a book where you start with person A, watching person B, and everything that person B does appears bizarre, incomprehensible, and we're looking at him, and then we write the second half from person B, looking at person A, and everything he does appears to be bizarre and incomprehensible. And we're inside each one. We understand inside, why he does everything that he does. But
some of your books approach that without, it isn't half and half. It's more like jumping back and forth. Various chapters.
You'll give a hell of a good example of this one time. He says, if we think we're rational, compared to everybody else, he says, one morning, he looked out the window and the guy next door was running around hiding colored eggs in the garden. So he went outside and he said, "Why are you hiding colored eggs in the garden?" And the guy had no idea. Now Jung said that's about as bizarre behavior as a human being could exhibit, is to run about at dawn hiding colored eggs. And of course, if pressed really hard, the guy would say that the bunny laid them. And you would point out that rabbits don't lay eggs, so the guy would just be in deeper trouble, you see. Actually, Jung said that we have many customs that are even socially acceptable, like that. We really have no idea why we do them. And there's certainly individual things that we do. We have no idea why we do them. We don't even know why we do things ourselves. Half things I have no idea really why I do. I think it's a complete illusion that I know why I do something. That was, of course, Freud's great contribution, right? The subconscious, that we are motivated outside of consciousness to do things we don't really know the purpose of our acts.
There are motivations that we don't know.
Right. There are goals that we're fulfilling, too, that we're not conscious of. I mean, it's not just motivation, because like a ritual could be a motivation thing, but there are goals that are fulfilled which we're not aware of, purposeful things that extend beyond ourselves. Like the salmon, flipping upstream to reproduce has probably no accurate concept of why he's doing it, and what the purpose of it is. I think that I was hypnotized once, and I discovered that what I was told to do, I supplied a reason immediately as to why I did it, so that it became reasonable, and appeared to me to be of my own volition. And afterwards I realized it wasn't, but my mind immediately supplied a reason. And that if I was programmed right now to pick up a chair and throw it through the window, before I threw it through the window, my mind would supply what would appear to be an adequate cause, an efficient cause in the Aristotelian sense.
In the what?
Aristotelian sense, efficient cause, you see, a chain of cause and effect, everything you do it.
Often in your books, the characters see what happens and try to make sense of it somehow. And there's a shifting almost from page to page as different events occur and force it changing in the interpretation.
Yes. Did I get it right? I said yes, but that's my answer.
Well, try saying no, and then what?
You're quite wrong.
Go on.
That's all.
That's all.
That's all. You talk about the silly putty thing. I still like that phrase. I wish there's that really
Maybe it's
silly,
copyright.
silly putty universe. No, well, I don't know if it is really. That, as a famous philosopher once said, you could put it that way. They'll think you mean to curve.